And we are not going to play with the narrative spread by Russia worldwide on that. I reiterate that we want to end this war, and I want the US president to see it. I want the Americans to see and to feel it. Europe and everyone will have to be in this union to make Russia, to compel it to end this war. My reaction was, we are ready to the format of 30-day truce, the format we were suggested by the US side. Yeah, your questions, please. RBK Ukraine, Yulia Krymova. Could you please tell us whether sanctions were discussed at the meeting? In case of truce violation, what kind of sanctions and who would guarantee them? And then Trump yesterday said he is expecting you in the White House. Do you have any plans to visit him? Thank you. Well, first of all of the topics were discussed. Just let me repeat it. I underscore it. All the important, sensitive topics were discussed, but they were just peaceful discussions, and then it's too early to talk about that. We spoke on that with the US side, and the US side wanted the Ukrainian side to express its readiness towards quick steps to end the war, after which the US side would give us the word that they will restore the assistance as soon as we make the steps. And we demonstrated our readiness, and they did what they promised. So it was the first constructive meeting like that. I think this is positive. Then some of our European colleagues also supported our serious steps regarding the ending of this war, and they demonstrated their support. The European colleagues also repeated that the ball is in Russian court. This is for a fact. So I think as regards sanctions or other ways of exerting pressure on Russia, I think it will depend on the American side. After the dialogue with the Russian side, I think, if I'm right in my understanding, it's about steps towards peace through force. If I am right in my comments on that, in my understanding of it, if Russians demonstrate their readiness to the American proposal as much as we are, at the very least, as a first step, then I think some decisions will come. If they're not ready, we do hope, very much hope, that the American side will be able to demonstrate what they have spoken about. Regarding a visit to Trump, I've heard nothing about such invitation. Any of our meeting with the US president has to end with positive results for the both parties. And I think this is how we need to approach any our meeting. The reactions and feedbacks in our societies today, well, this is like real-life reaction. And I would really like us to have results, positive results for the people, because the people have been fighting in Ukraine for quite some time. They have been battling, and they deserve, I would rather not say to see the light in the end of the tunnel, but yes, I'd like them to be able to see this light ahead of them. I would really like that every meeting of mine with the President of the United States of America results in positive results. And from here, they need to prepare to announce proper format. Sky News, please. Nazar Safarov, Mr. President, was there any discussion of security guarantees at yesterday's meeting? If not, is there any understanding after the meeting what can be expected as such security guarantee? Also, if Russians, for some reason, agree to To the end of peace. No, you would like to say the end of war. Yes, yes. This 30-day truce. What is the realistic plan? When to expect? In a day, in a two? You know, first and foremost, everything that is in the statement, deem it positive, a signal. There is a mention of the security of Ukraine, and the topic clearly was discussed. I got all the details talking by phone with my team, but still, when it comes to security guarantees, we'll have to discuss it in greater detail. If we are going to have 30-day truce, these 30 days will have to be used to put certain matters on paper. I mean, we have our ideas, our suggestions, but we will need to agree our steps with our allies. Also regarding formats of security guarantees Ukraine will have after the end of the war. As regards the second part, when a ceasefire could be realistically expected? Yes, everything depends now on whether Russia is willing to do so, to instill truce, or it is rather willing to continue killing people. Everything depends on this country today, because America did express its position, made relevant steps. Ukraine also demonstrated its position without any, ambiguous understandings, and I think Russia will have to respond to that. After that, well, we said that anything will be possible if this happens, what kind of monitoring there will be, what technical teams will be, but this is about next steps. Mr. President, two questions. First, do we have information about the American Party, about American Party having pre-agreed 30-day truce with the Russian side before yesterday's discussions? And also, what kind of sanctions, at least theoretically, may be applied to Russian side in case of breach of it? Maybe some matters like Mr. Trump suggested or something else. Another question regarding Suja. The Russians are trying to shrink our negotiations field in advance to these negotiations. So what can be said of Suja? Thank you. Our troops in the Kursk Oblast do what they have been commissioned to. Russians try to exert pressure on us. The military command does everything it can to preserve the lives of our warriors as much as possible. Now, regarding what the Russian side is going to demonstrate in the coming days, it's well, not about what they can or will try to show in the Kursk direction. There will be all sorts of intimidations, including nuclear ones. It's quite understandable. I know everyone understands the rule book they are used before any diplomatic effort. One has to be very sober in assessing those threats, particularly real threats, not just information threats. Yet people should not remain in vacuum regarding information. Our intelligence service, our MOD has to act promptly to dispel any sort of misinformation regarding threats, non-threats, but we have to be prepared to a strong information pressure. Please believe me on that. We already find ourselves for quite some time in similar things and similar situations. We don't understand what is happening, and the Russians have been doing what they have been always doing. Do we know if the Americans had this thing discussed, the 30-day truce with Russians before the negotiations or not. Actually, I don't care, actually. It doesn't matter for me if they had preliminary discussions of that or not. My take of it is whether it can bring us closer to the end of this war or not. I think that today we had to show our readiness, not just in terms of what we have, in terms of how we are living through it, but we have to show the whole world in real terms what we are ready to do, and we did it. This is the most important part. CBS.
President Holly Williams from CBS News. Last month, you suggested that President Trump was living in a disinformation space created by Russia. Mr. President, do you fear that the President of the United States is still being influenced by Russian disinformation about Ukraine?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, like I said from the start, I think it's very important we have a meeting, a detailed meeting. This is the meeting we had in it was a meeting that allowed both parties to discuss, to share, to show, and this will complete remaining within one context. Because of that, to my view, there is a of the meeting. We had to have some time. I understand more contact, and what we had is that we'll need more meetings to have them more positive, like the recent one, and then we will hope for good result.
Mr. President, you didn't really answer the question. Idea that the President of the United States is still being influenced. Russian disinformation about your country.
Let me explain you how the whole thing happens. I and you are in Ukraine. This is what I have in mind when I say that our partners, particularly from the United States, they should have visited us more frequently. We are living in a world when just one bit of information, one tweet can change a lot, can affect a lot. It can work differently, but it still works. For people in Ukraine fighting for themselves, well, this information may be a hard swallow if it is being perceived by someone who lost all his or her family, has to fight. From here, the need to communicate. If you do not communicate, this space, this void will be filled by another type of information, not the one that we have here. This is why I've always said to our colleagues from the United States to come out here to see where are our ruins, where there are complexities, where people are living, how they're fighting, where our kids are. On the one hand, you know, it's a nightmare to see that they have to visit underground schools during the war. On the other hand, it's a chance for them to see and communicate with other children. Not to say that this is happiness for them. It's still big grief and, you know, big problem. This war is a problem. But at least for kids, it's a possibility to see each other, and this is important. It is not easy to understand everything with wealth of different information floating the world, particularly Russian information. And yes, this is how they work. And you can do nothing about it. They spend a lot on this information, and they have impact in many countries worldwide. The only weapon the Ukrainians have against all this sheer volume of Russian information is solely something that we have thanks to you, media representatives. We can spread our information across the world, as well as we have this opportunity of dialogue. And better if the dialogue unfolds here in Ukraine. This is what I think. This is a challenge indeed. The Russians will do everything, as I mentioned when talking about disinformation. The Russians will be doing everything in an attempt to, to really put Ukraine at odds with the US. And the recent results from Saudi Arabia, the restoration of assistance, one of the results, some first steps to end this war. Some might see positive results in it as well. I think, besides that, the very meeting we had in Saudi Arabia completely broke down Russia's plan to completely escalate the situation between Ukraine and the United States of America. It's rather about de-escalation. This is how it should go with partners. Al Jazeera, please.
Hassan Masoud, Al Jazeera Arabic. Thank you for the opportunity. First of all, is there any red lines that Ukraine set that will never cross during any coming negotiations about finishing the war, especially when we speak about the occupied territories of Ukraine? And the other question is about the last attacks yesterday on Moscow and Russia. Is this a sign that Ukraine, I will not use the card words, but has a good or strong position in any negotiations also? Thank you so much.
Let me first of all start by saying that our army, our defense forces, are using a variety of domestic produced weapons, particularly when we talk about drones. It's not to demonstrate force. Let me explain it. It's a response, a just response, an absolutely just response to what Russia has been doing to us. Take today. We had strikes, not just in Kryvyi Rih, but let me dwell with this Kryvyi Rih example because it has humanitarian aspect of it. There were strikes against a hotel there. You know, we talked to press secretary today. He also hails from Kryvyi Rih, and he says there are no more intact hotels in Kryvyi Rih. It speaks a lot. This is not a chance. You know, all the hotels ruined in Kryvyi Rih because of ballistic strikes, and this is not just one strike, a chance one, a repeated strike against the same hotel. How do you think, will the Ukrainian troops respond to such strikes or not? I think the answer is clear. It's not about showing one's force. It's not a show-off. It's rather a demonstration of us being independent, sovereign nation that will respond to any strike, regardless the size of your territory. If you think you're a big empire, you will have to expect a response from a country like Ukraine. It wasn't us who started the war. They did it. Yesterday, we reiterated we want to end the war. But, you know, killing our people without expecting answers, this won't happen, ever. As regards red lines, as the president of my country, I can tell you that me, myself, and the people of my country will never break constitution. They will always be defending our land, our lives. It's not easy to fight against an enemy like that, but this is our fight for independence. So we are not going to recognize any territories occupied by the Russian territory. This is for a fact. Our people were fighting for it. Our heroes fought for that. Wounded, killed, many of them. No one will forget about that. And when I say that no one will forget about that, I want to say that this is the most important red line. We will never let anyone forget about this crime against Ukraine. Couple more questions. Just a couple more words regarding the rare earths agreement that State Secretary Rubio mentioned yesterday as the one to be signed soon. Will this, provided you have an invitation to Washington, will it be signed as a step? Well, Ukraine will be ready to sign this framework agreement as one of the first steps. And actually, I mentioned it that even before that, we had been ready for it. So there are no undercover secrets. We are ready for it. Guardian, please. And Kyoto, and that's...
From the Guardian. Could you say the few days where you didn't have the US intelligence sharing, how big an effect did that have on Ukraine's ability both to defend itself and to attack, and were there any concrete results that, or losses that came about from that lack of intelligence sharing? Thank you.
I cannot tell it to you, frankly. I will explain why. At some point, I will definitely mention it, but I cannot tell it now because it wasn't by chance that I had lots of meetings, technical chief of staff's meetings, because we had to prepare for certain things we may be facing on our way. Because of that, I cannot tell anything, because various parties might understand our readiness. I hope you understand what I have in mind. So, yeah, it's very good that we have this assistance and intelligence data exchange restored. I'm thankful for this. And Kyoto with last question, please.
Are you ready to the martial law, cancel martial law during the ceasefire? Was the U.S. supposed to hold the president election during the ceasefire?
Yeah, thank you. I think today all of us have to focus on the first steps to have this peace, this truce. In terms of our readiness to truce and the ceasefire, I think we convincingly said that. The question is rather whether the Russian side is ready for it. The second one is whether our partners will be ready to exercise technical monitoring. This is very important. I repeated it that truce in the skies and sea is very important for us. We need to monitor it because we don't understand who we have to deal with. Given the experience of previous years, we will need technical assistance from our partners, and we've got assurances from them. This is very important. After these steps, there may be use. I mean, this proposal that was suggested by the Americans yesterday, it's about 30-day truce to fully prepare for a war plan to end the war. A fully faceted plan with guarantees, security guarantees for the Ukrainian side. If everything of it is done, after the plan is prepared, after there is a phased implementation of it, it will lead to the end of war, and after the end of war, it would be only logical to lift the martial law, and after that, The elections will go within the meaning of the Ukrainian legislation. No one will specially postpone them. Thank you. Thank you, dear colleagues. Just one more specification. Regarding what are the chances that Russia agrees or disagrees to the tabled proposals? Chances, we'll have to see. What will happen to Russia if they disagree? What the US will do? Well, some strong steps regarding the Russian party. Some strong steps against the Russian party. I think that we can count on some powerful steps. I have no details to share, but at least not for now, but I think we can speak of sanctions and strengthening of Ukraine. Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you, Mr. President. Why did it take so long? They were sitting for